Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Chats with Kat on the Voices Adoptees podcast. I am your host, Kat, and I hope everyone is having a great week so far. Don't forget to grab your coffee, tea, or a preferred beverage and settle on in. I am currently here with Kim, who is a Korean adoptee, and she focuses on meeting up and community outreach, IRL, and online spaces. So, Kim, just briefly introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Gailey Fitting. I am 31 years old, and I currently live in Pennsylvania, pretty much on the Maryland line, so South Central PA. And I was adopted when I was 5 months old from South Korea.
Okay. So, obviously, I was going to ask what your connection to adoption is, but we already know that you are an adoptee. So, what's your story? Talk about it a little bit.
So I was adopted when I was 5 months old. I was born in Seoul, South Korea, and my adoptive parents were older in their life. They were around 40 years old, and they apparently didn't, have any issues as far as conceiving children or anything like that. They just were kind of living their lives, and they wanted to adopt and have a child. And they specifically looked at China and Korea for adoptees, and they wanted preferably a girl. So they signed up, and actually, at the time, the Korea program was a little bit slower moving, and they weren't getting a ton of Korean adoptees in, just with legal reasons and things like that in Korea. And then in 1993, right before I actually arrived from Korea, my dad had broken his neck, and he wasn't sure if he was going to
Yeah.
be able to continue this and everything, but they did. And I arrived in September in 1993, and I'm an only child. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm very, very close with my adoptive parents. We've always been very close throughout my life, and they've also
Oh,
just given me a ton of experiences that I feel very grateful for, as far as connecting with other adoptees and different things like that, ever since I was a little kid. So they've put a big, important piece of adoption and my culture, onto the way that I grew up. So, but yeah, otherwise it's been the three of us. And then I grew up and got married, and now I live here with my husband, and we just welcomed our daughter, Ella. She is 10 months old now. So I'm kind of in the middle of going through everything, being an adoptee and a first time mom and all that stuff at the same time. So,
but let's go back to your adoptive parents. You said that they wanted you to be connected to your culture, I believe.
yeah, no, I was very blessed to have adoptive parents who didn't try to kind of hide away my culture and where I came from. They very much welcomed it, and they wanted me to know where I came from, and they were always very open about it. So and I'll go into a little more detail actually. They actually would take me to a yearly adoptee dinner for Korean adoptees and adoptive
Aw.
families. We had other friends who had Korean adoptees. So throughout my childhood, my mom would cook food from Korea. They really gave me a big foundation as far as, learning about my culture more so than unfortunately some parents do. And, I know that every experience is different for, each adoptee, but I feel very blessed and very grateful that I had adoptive parents who were so open to teaching me about my culture and things like that. So,
I love that. And so I was going to ask actually, like, what is your earliest memory of your adoptive parents?
oh, that's a good question. I mean, probably the one thing that always just sticks out is my parents live on a horse farm, and from the time I was in diapers and I was little, they were putting me on a horse, in front of the saddle with my dad and different things like that. So I just know probably my earliest memory is, riding horses and learning how to ride. My dad trains horses
Aw.
and taught me how to ride and things like that. So that's always just been our family thing. And the one memory I have is we also had a Texas Longhorn cow, and the cow was around the same age as me. And and we actually have a photograph of it, but I was sitting on the cow and I was just a little baby. So yeah, I feel like all throughout my childhood, there's always been a time when we've been riding together or different things like that. But we've always been together. It's always been us as a unit.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it's so nice. Oh my goodness. So I know you said that you had gone to adoptee dinners. You're very engrossed in your culture because your parents are very supportive of it. What was school like? Was school the same sort of way where it was a very positive experience for you?
So my schooling actually was a little bit different too because most of my life I was homeschooled. And I went to kindergarten, I went to preschool and I went to kindergarten, and I always say that I was a kindergarten dropout because I had a teacher who was not so great, and my mom actually had a teaching background, and she never thought, "Oh, I'm going to homeschool my child."
Right.
But we had some issues with kindergarten, so they ended up pulling me out of kindergarten, and then the public school system that I would have been in was definitely not as welcoming to other cultures, specifically Asian cultures and, Hispanic cultures, things like that. So there had been around that time some scares or kind of threatening experiences that my parents were aware of, that they knew we don't want to send him to it. So then they thought about going to a private school and where they had actually gone, but things just didn't end up meshing up properly. So my mom ended up homeschooling me from 1st grade through 7th grade, and then I did go to the private school where my parents actually met. I went to a private school for 8th, ninth, and 10th grade. And it was fine. I was not the happiest though, not necessarily anything related to race or culture or anything like that. It was actually a pretty diverse community. And there were actually some exchange students from Korea and other places, and some black kids, white kids, so it was a mix of us. It was actually pretty
Cool.
diverse. And then, yeah, I actually ended up asking my mom to homeschool me again for 11th and 12th grade. So that just kind of shows how close we were. But the only thing I do remember in school, or at the actual school, was my first picture day. And my first picture day, we got I did the picture day, got my pictures back. And I was not happy with the way that my eyes looked compared to everybody else's.
Oh,
And that was
okay.
the first thing that I remember that I just felt self-conscious about. I realized that when I smiled, my eyes were very, dare I say, squinty. And that was just something I was like, nope, I don't like this look. And what I would do, and this was middle school, so middle school is already a tough
Right.
time.
Yeah.
But what I would do
Oh,
then is I would stand in the mirror and I would practice smiling, but I would practice so my smile, like my cheekbones wouldn't go up and like push my eyes. So I
right.
actually like trained myself to smile without making my eyes look smaller. And I mean, and then that's how I smiled like all my life. So that was kind of the first thing that I took to heart. And that was actually my own acknowledgement, not from others or whatever. And yeah, but otherwise, school wise, I was very blessed to not have any really bad experiences or anything like that. So yeah.
I think it's a very interesting thing you just mentioned about how, in a way, you're policing yourself and you didn't necessarily receive it from other kids, but you received it from yourself internally in a way.
Hmm.
Did you feel that it was because you were very different from the other children?
It's kind of funny because I'm trying to think about going back into the moment. I think it was the superficial, like, oh, I don't feel different, but I look different, because I've grown up here my
Right.
whole life, so Southern York County, Pennsylvania is, who I am. But
Yeah.
I think it was just the superficial, like, why do my eyes look small? Or why are my eyes a different shape? Or, the girls were starting to get into makeup. And so I was getting into makeup, and like they would try to, do eye makeup where the eyeshadow was on their crease line a certain way. But if I tried to put it on, I only have the monolid eyes. So then it wouldn't show up. So I think it was just kind of the growing up of girls getting into makeup and girls trying to look pretty for boys, and
Right.
those types of things, where then I was like, oh, things aren't looking exactly the way I want it to look. I think that was more the thing.
Yeah.
So
So in school, for me at least, when I was younger, we had the ancestral tree project, the family tree project. Did you ever do something like that as well?
I think I did,
Hmm.
but I think we did. I'm so connected with my adopted parents
Hmm.
that I always just consider them my parents, and I never really even thought about my biological parents until I was a little older. And I think whenever something like that happened, I was just like, "Oh, yeah, my mom and dad, I'm just gonna talk to them about it." It wasn't a second second guessing anything. I just automatically went to my adoptive parents and their background. And I think that, says a lot about how comfortable they made me feel and welcomed and, not different, in their eyes or anything like that. But definitely as I got older, I would be like, what do I put for this? And there were some experiences even in work
Mhm.
where, I'd say, oh, I don't know what I should do for this question or that. And but I think as a kid, a lot I was, I didn't see a ton or recognize a ton of the differences except for kind of like you said, like being self-critical of myself,
Right.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's interesting. During that time, it's a very difficult stage of life to grow into yourself. And one of two things happens. Either, other people will criticize us in a way that makes us criticize ourselves, or we just notice things and we begin to criticize ourselves. Right. And how did your adopted family help you through that time?
They were always very, reassuring, and I think sometimes it was harder because I definitely was one who always struggled with depression, and I would take things much more deeply as far as, the way I looked or the way I was critical of myself. And my parents are very, black and white, just
Mm.
like, no, this is who you are. This is, we love you for who you are. And I think in some ways it was what I needed. So because it kind of snapped me out of me overthinking
Right.
things. But then definitely as I got older, I had to do a little bit more discovery and research on my own to kind of see like why am I feeling this way. And as we go on with our conversation today, it'll probably connect more. But I went to a conference for Korean adoptees in 2022, and there were a lot of questions where I was like, "Oh, that makes sense now." So yeah.
As you got older, you said that there wasn't really a need or a desire necessarily for you to find your family, your biological family, which is
Hmm.
unique because there are many adoptees who want to, but I believe there are also many who don't necessarily want to know. So, what was that like for
Right.
you? Where did that stem from? You say you're close with your family, so I can imagine. Hmm.
Yeah. So I definitely questioned my parents about like, where I came from, what was my story, who were my biological parents, and they gave me the information that they had. And a lot of adoption agencies won't give you a ton of information because either they don't have it or they just want to give you the minimum or, whatever reason. So my what I learned from my mom, my adoptive mom, was that my mother and father were together. They were a couple, but my mother was 15, I believe, and my father was 20.
Mm.
And obviously, she was in school and they were a couple that had been together a long time and things like that. But obviously, then she got pregnant and, she wanted to give the child a better life than, what she could offer at the time or whatever. So my parents told me that. I think I was around 10, 9 or 10, I believe. That's kind of what my memory is telling me. And I was satisfied with that. I kind of was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I didn't question it. I think I didn't question it because I was so blessed with such a such good adoptive parents that I was like, well, if I was to see my biological parents, I would say thank you because I've had such a great life.
Right.
And yeah, I think I was fine with that for the rest of my life. I may have wondered a little bit, but I never felt the need or want to be like, I need to find this person. I can't really give a reason specifically why I was so set on like, no, I don't need to yet. And maybe that'll change. I know sometimes it changes. I know after having my daughter, I think it's popped into my head a little bit more
Mm.
because I'm like, well, my adopted mom, I was the only child and she didn't go through being pregnant or anything like that. So we were kind of on the journey
Right.
together, which was fun. So I think there was a little bit of I wouldn't say a loss, but just a confusion or uncertainty of like, how do I do this, and like what was it like for my mother
Right.
or I think the other thing that popped in my head was, in Korea, I wonder what, special things Korea, likes to tell pregnant women to eat, or, what things that they find important during pregnancy. I was very curious because I'm like, I'm following the American,
Right.
standards and what they follow, but I'm very curious to know what the Korean culture would say about, how you should go through your pregnancy or childbirth and all of that. And so I think it's popped into my head more lately. There's a little bit more of the wonderings,
Mhm.
but definitely not still like I need to find her. But who knows? Who knows? It might change. It might change later on. So we'll see.
Right. So for many adoptees, they go through a period of fog where they experience different things, such as questioning themselves, questioning their identity, where they belong, notions like this. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you have experienced anything like that, and what is your experience if you have?
Yes. So I believe that I started going into the adoptee fog, and I have heard that term quite a bit.
Right.
I think I kind of started that with the pandemic. So, as I said, I've been totally accepting of like my culture and like my adoption and everything up all through my life and even now. But then when the pandemic hit, that's when I started having a bigger desire or a bigger want or need to connect with other adoptees and find out more
Right.
and see if there's others feeling the same way as me. As far as, at the time it was xenophobia just because of
Right.
the virus and everything. And, in my little small town, I really never had a lot of racial issues until then. And then it was then when I would go to the grocery store and somebody would be talking about it and they'd give me weird looks. And that was kind of the start of it. And I started feeling a little bit more unsafe going here and there without somebody else or my husband and that's when I started searching online just like for other adoptees. And I was very blessed to find came upon the KAAN organization, KAAN, which I guess is the Korean Adoptee Adoptive Families Network. And I just found this Facebook page. And I also found a Central Pennsylvania Korean adoptees group on Facebook and Baltimore adoptees. And because we're close to Baltimore,
Mm.
Maryland. And it kind of opened up a whole other world for me, because obviously my parents had taken me to adoptee dinners as a kid,
Yes.
but at the time, I just kinda, like, hung with my parents, and I saw other people who looked like me, but, it wasn't a big deal. I liked the food, like, whatever. And then when I started seeing these communities, the first thing I attended was a virtual happy hour through
Oh,
KAAN. And it was just kind of a time to connect. It wasn't they didn't have a big agenda as far as, like, this is what we're going to talk about today. It was just a matter of let's get together, let's, have a drink virtually and let's just talk and
right.
meet. And that was the first thing that I was like, it was actually pretty funny because my husband was sitting in the other room and I was online talking to all these adoptees, the screen full of adoptees, Korean adoptees. And one guy was from Tennessee and he had this thick southern accent. And then there was another guy who had a Boston accent. And I'm just like, my mind was blown because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so bizarre because I was coming from it from an adult perspective, not just, as a kid.
Right.
And that's kind of when I started going full force into what am I missing? What else is out there in an adoptee community? And so I'd started doing a lot more virtual things with the KAAN organization. I went to a couple dinners locally with some of the Central PA Korean adoptees. And then that's also when I found out that there was a conference coming up and it's an annual conference.
Right.
And that's kind of when I dove headfirst into thinking about going to that. So,
So tell me about that.
yeah.
What is specifically the conference? What did you do there? What did you meet? What was it like?
So the conference is the KAAN conference. It is, targeted for Korean adoptees, but they also welcome other adoptees too. So there were Chinese adoptees, Japanese adoptees, other, Asian adoptees. It was also open to adoptive
Mm.
families and adoptive parents and kids of adoptees. So it's a very welcoming, open conference. So I went in 2022. It was in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
I signed up, I think, in the spring, and this was going to be in June. And I signed up and I was all ready. And I started freaking out, as the time got a little bit closer and thinking, I don't know if I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I should do
Right.
this, just because it was such kind of this bizarre step of like, I'm going to meet so many people that I don't even have any connection to, but yet we have a connection. So it was kind of mind boggling. But my husband and also my adoptive parents, they were like, you can totally can back out, but I think you should go.
Mhm.
So they were very supportive of it. All of them were very supportive. So I went and flew into Denver. And the first thing that they had there was a Friday night adoptee dinner. And the Friday night adoptee dinner was just for adoptees only. So some of the things were just adoptees only. Some of it was open to whomever. Some of it was a fishbowl type of thing where the adoptees were the only ones
Right.
talking, but others could listen. So the first thing was just a Friday night adoptee only
Mm.
dinner. And we met up at a park, and it was really cool because we're all just gathered there. And they also had a first time attendee session and at the Friday night thing. So I went to that, and I still remember the room was totally silent. And we're all just sitting in like a big circle, and everybody's totally silent. And then
Cool.
finally somebody said, the way that I'm feeling right now is bizarre because I know none of these people whatsoever, but yet we look alike, and we all, have this Korean adoptee connection, but it feels like we're brothers and sisters, even though we're not even like we don't know each other. And then everybody then started talking like, yes, I totally get that. That's exactly how I'm feeling. And then it was like, it was fine. It was relaxed then. And that's how the whole weekend was. I mean, there were sessions that on Saturday and Sunday that were much more, you could choose what sessions you went to. So some were specifically towards finding your biological family. Some were about more trauma-based things that people may have experienced growing up or whatever. Some may have been more about legal things and laws about, the adoption agencies and adoption process and all of that. And then others may have been more about just like existing as an adoptee and, connecting. And one of my favorite ones that I went to was more of a I guess I would say history based session where they had you like put on a timeline, like what significant moments stood out to you as far as like being Asian American or whatever. So like there's a big timeline, and you put up like, oh, the Olympics in Korea,
Right.
or oh, the Shang-Chi movie, Crazy Rich Asians. And it was just it was much more of a community visual type of session. And then the other one that I went to that really stood out to me a lot was creating virtual spaces for
Yeah.
adoptees. And that's what kind of kickstarted another piece of my adoptee process journey, whatever. Was I went to this session, and it just basically talked about like, look, we're from all over the place. We need to be connected. We need to figure out ways to be connected. How can we create virtual spaces that others can connect to? So I actually ended up starting after this conference, I ended up starting a CAD fitness group on Facebook and stuff, and ended up connecting to a lot more. But anyway, the conference was incredible. The sessions were throughout the day. Saturday night, they had like a Saturday gala, where they had a performer, Korean performer. They had a keynote speaker, Michelle Lee, who is a news reporter.
Nice.
And I forget what date it was, but she got popular through the news and went viral because she's a news reporter, and somebody called in and said, "Oh, you were being racist and stuff," because she was talking about her own culture of food for New Year's and things. And it was a bizarre thing, but she went viral. And so then she became a speaker as well as the news reporter. And so she talked about being an adoptee and stuff like that. So they had keynotes, they had this gala where we all dressed up, and then Sunday was the end of the conference. But what was I would say the most amazing to me, besides all of the actual conference, sessions and things like that, was all the social time and just the connecting time. We spent time We were kind of on the outskirts of the city, so there wasn't a place to like go after the
Right.
conference, but we all did karaoke Friday night and just like hung out. And then Saturday night, I was up until 4:30 in the morning on Sunday, which that never has happened, since like college days.
Right.
And it was just us all hanging out, going into different people's hotel rooms and just hanging out and talking and just socializing. And I would say some of those times were like the most crucial or the most important to me because you were just connecting with so many other adoptees. And it was pretty tough leaving the conference then because it was like you had this little world and then you left,
Yeah. I know.
But it was life-changing, and I ended up writing, like, a blog post, like a letter to the first timers if somebody else would be interested in going. I was encouraged to do that by one of the adoptees that I met that weekend. And thankfully with the conference, I haven't gone back just because life, but, I really wanna go next year. They do it every year, and even since then, even though I haven't gone to the conference again, I've stayed in touch with adoptees. I talk to at least one adoptee probably every day. We have had local things. I've done a trip to meet up with an adoptee in another state, and we spent a weekend hiking and having fun. So it's been a continuous thing, even though it's not necessarily in person all the time.
Right.
So it's definitely brought a lot to my life, just in addition to all the other wonderful things about my life, but it's just added so much more since. So the conference was huge for me.
Yeah.
So
I get that because
yeah.
I've definitely been to a particular type of conference that's really inspired me, motivated me, and surrounded me with like-minded individuals where you just get it. They just understand, and there's nothing that
Mhm.
needs to be said. It's a very comforting sort of blanket around you, if you will. It's a
And I think the cool thing to me was, you know, all adoptees have different
yeah,
stories, have different experiences, and and that was one thing. The conference opened my eyes to some of the horrible things that people have experienced, and it was heartbreaking. And because I had such a wonderful adoption, it made me realize, like, it's not just always that perfect, or not that it's perfect, but it's not always so positive for some people. And
right.
but the cool thing
Mhm.
is there were so many of us with so many different backgrounds, but yeah, we were just connected, and nobody was judgmental about you know if I had a positive experience but they didn't. Like, it wasn't like, oh well, you had a good experience, you don't understand. No, it was nobody talked about or pointed fingers at anybody, for you know, having a good or a bad experience. They we everybody understood, and everybody was connected, and nobody cared what kind of background you came from. So
Yeah, it
yeah.
seems like it's very open arms type of deal where
Right.
everyone's getting along. It's really nice, actually. I haven't
Right.
been to
Yeah.
a conference in quite a while, so I remember the feelings as well. So you create I'm not sure how many online spaces that you have created. You mentioned one of them briefly before. Can you go into that a little bit more as well?
Yeah, so after the conference, I knew I need to make it a priority to stay in touch with people.
Right.
And one of the groups that I was in during that virtual spaces group, the one guy I was talking to, we were both like, huh, I need to work out, but I can't get into these fitness groups or whatever. And then it like sparked us, and we said, well, what if we do like a CAD, Korean adoptee group for fitness? And it doesn't necessarily have to be just weight loss, or just, you know, running, or just, doing, cardio or whatever. It could be anything. Like, everybody could have a different goal, but we're just there to support each
Right.
other. So that was kind of the first thing I did, was start this CAD fitness group. And then the first thing I did was invite the people that I met. And, after the conference, I had so many like new friends, and, so I'm just adding them on Facebook and everything. And that group it grew quite a bit. It started with the people who went to the conference, who I met at the conference, and then others who I even hadn't met, they were invited by others, and we've had, I don't know how many our total is up to right now. That's probably bad, but I think we've got definitely have over 100 people in it. But it's continues to grow, and we were having, at least monthly Zoom meetings, just to like check in. And sometimes it was just a talk, sometimes it had more of an agenda. There's one girl who, posts a lot of mindfulness things in it, which is great.
Yeah.
We were having fitness challenges just to motivate people,
Oh,
where you didn't have to necessarily, like, it wasn't just a running challenge or something. It was like, no, you have your goal for the day. There
oh,
was one person who had a heart condition or something. So she was like, I can't run, I can't do a lot of stuff, but my goal is to just walk to work. And I said, great, that's your
right.
goal for the day. And then if you complete your goal for the day, you get so many points. If you attempt and do some of your goal, you get a little less number of points. If you don't do any of your goal, then you get 0 points. And we had it go and go, and it was just kind of to motivate people, and people really liked it. So the fitness group was one thing that we started and continues to do a little less frequently, just because of busyness, but it's still out there. And then I have a lot of adoptee friends now through the conference who are from different states, and I'm like, I need to find, there have to be others around
Yeah.
here. So I put out a post in just a general Korean adoptee group, and found that there were quite a number of people, within probably 40 minutes away from
Wow.
me.
Yeah.
So I started a group chat and connected people to each other. And I said, okay, let's meet up, pick some dates. So we've had two very local group meetups for dinner. We have one that I'm planning right now, a local adoptee picnic
Oh,
for friends and family too this summer. There's a group who wants to go down, they want to do a Korean spa trip down to Virginia, DC area. We're not far from Baltimore's Ellicott City, which is like Koreatown, where they have shops and grocery stores and food, all the stuff. So there's some day trips being planned. So yeah, just kind of things here and there, but there are definitely the social media is so amazing for that, because it makes it so much easier to connect with people.
yeah.
So
I was going to ask you what you feel the importance of social media and online spaces is for connecting.
yeah, I'm all about social media. I mean, sometimes I hate it, but I love my Facebook and Instagram. But Facebook has really been the one where, I could just, well, that's how I started it. I just searched Korean adoptees,
Right.
and that's where I found like the Korean adoptees of Central PA. And so I think Facebook, and specifically, has been great because there are groups that you can easily find and access. And I mean, there have been some people who have posted saying, my name is so and so, I'm this age, I live here, I have this photograph, I believe it's my biological sister or whatever, but I have no contact information. If anybody has information, let me know. And there have been people who have helped out each other through social
Mm,
media, who have then made connections for each other. So that's just really neat. It's pretty powerful what social media can do,
right.
whether it's just creating a little meetup, for dinner, or if it's finding biological family members. So I think, without social media, obviously it's a
Right.
lot harder. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, I know for me, Facebook has become such a tool, to connect. So
So, what is something
yeah.
that adult you right now would say to the younger version of you? And did you see yourself here?
Don't be so self-critical, use the passion and drive that, fuels your wants and needs, as far as, connecting with others, to really get you there, because I mean, it's possible. And I know for me, even now, there are times where I'm like, oh, I really should reach out to these people or do this or do that. And, sometimes it's just hard. But I know, like, for me, I need to, keep this adoptee connection going, and make it a priority, because it has been so life fulfilling for me. And it's been neat too, like, my parents love it, and they love meeting other adoptees, and they think it's great. And my husband's met a lot of the people, and we've had some stay here and at our house and stuff, and it's just mind boggling. So just the typical, you're not alone. you know
Right.
there's others out there, and even if you live in small town America, you can find others not too far away, or near and far,
Right.
because thankfully with technology and things, it's possible. So
So what's next for
yeah.
you? Is there gonna be a new group that you create?
I don't know about a new group. I have to think of, a good group topic or whatever, since there are so many kind of general ones or location based ones. But no, I definitely want to, my next thing is, getting this picnic to happen locally, for the Korean adoptees and friends and families. And my next goal is to definitely get back to the KAAN conference, because last year I didn't go because I was pregnant, and it was pretty nice. There were a bunch of them who FaceTimed me at the conference,
Aw.
to and say hi, and people from North Carolina, and people from Michigan, people from Chicago, so it was neat for that. But and actually the KAAN conference is next weekend, so in June. So yeah, so that's definitely my next thing, is I want to get back to that. And maybe it'll just be me, or maybe it'll be my husband and my daughter. So we'll see. But definitely just try to get as many in person kind of visits and things like that going. So
And then last question. What would you recommend to somebody who is looking for adoptee conferences or adoptee group meetups? What would you recommend for them to do? How would you recommend them go about researching it online?
I mean, it's ask Google. But for real, like it I just kind of went to Facebook and Google and searched, Central PA, or Pennsylvania Korean adoptees, and kind of went down the rabbit hole of seeing all that was out there. So use your resources, as far as whether it's social media or Google or whatever, or even word of mouth. I've become a lot more open with, if I see somebody who, it's an assumption, but somebody who looks like me or is of, Asian heritage, but they, clearly have an English accent, not an Asian accent or something. Sometimes I'm more open with saying, like, oh, what ethnicity are you, or things like that. And I've become more open with kind of searching, whether it's in person or whether it's online. So I would say just search away and see what's out there. But definitely Facebook is a big resource for finding groups, and then just introduce yourself. And the nice thing is a lot of people out there are feeling the same way, and they're not judgmental, and they will welcome you with open arms. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this episode of Chats with Kat. A special thank you to our guest, Kim. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share this episode so that Kim's voice and story can be heard. Be sure to check out our Patreon page to receive exclusive membership perks and leave us feedback about our episodes. And as always, remember, someone somewhere is thinking of you. You are not alone.